Good morning, everyone. It's Phil Wade from Dalton Wade Real Estate Group. I'm here today with Lisa Gudath and Claren Jokel, and we're talking about negotiating and navigating the home inspection. Whenever you get a property under agreement as a buyer's agent, in 99% of the cases, there's going to be a home inspection. So getting your client prepared prior to the start of the home inspection in terms of what they should inspect, is important, and will sort of help facilitate, the process and, continue to move things along. And what I mean by that is, so when you're actually showing them the house prior to, making an offer, that you've pointed out to them, pretty much all the things that potentially the home inspector, might point out that you can visually see. So those would be the roof. You're going to want to look at the electrical box. You're going to want to look at, if there's any peeling or chipped paint. You're going to want to look at the air conditioning and the air handler. You're going to want to look at the windows, the major components of the home. So, and typically you're going to be taking your client out and showing them, multiple houses before they make an offer. So if you kind of start with that process, by the time as you go through looking at houses with them, you would have taught them how to actually, look at a home and what you and your client should be looking for. So, and again, the idea here is when you've made your offer, you've kind of factored in all those items that were visually apparent, so that when you get to the home inspection, the home inspector is certainly going to point out, any defects, deficiencies in the house, and if any of those were spotted before, they're going to come up again. So now you're actually at the home inspection. So what is the purpose of the home inspection? The home inspection is for your client to better understand the house and sort of all its workings, to make sure there are no safety issues, structural issues, or items that when you showed them the home, they could not have seen. So what's an example of that? An example of that might be, electrical outlets. That this comes up a lot. Electrical outlets that aren't grounded. And Lisa now has a little tool that she uses and can actually stick it in the socket and see in advance if the property's, that particular outlet is grounded. And again, why you're trying to figure everything out in advance is so, we're writing as here's the tester Lisa just handed me. So you basically stick this in, and it flashes a light, and it tells you whether or not that particular outlet is grounded. So George, the home inspector, gave that to her. So it's a pretty neat little tool. So something you might pick up. Lisa keeps it in her purse at all times. So, so again, kind of getting back to items that you couldn't see, safety things. Again, if you don't have one of those testers, the home inspector is going to test it, and you may come up with a bunch of outlets that aren't grounded, structural issues. You're going to have a termite inspection, and the termite inspector, they do a much more in-depth look at the home than you're going to do when you're showing it. So they may, come up with, that there's termites, or there's been previous termites. Oftentimes if you look on the electrical panel, you'll see the termite sticker, and when the house was actually either treated or last inspected. So now the report has come out. The home inspector's finished his work. If it's a good inspector, he's kind of taken your client and you around, and kind of pointed out everything that potentially is an issue with the home. So again, the home inspection isn't to sort of renegotiate, the purchase price, even though sometimes, that's ultimately what ends up happening. It's really, again, as I said, safety issues, any major things that are, potentially wrong with, the property. So you're going to end up, your buyer, and again, before you've started the home inspection, hopefully you've educated them on kind of what the home inspection is, so that they're not asking, and it happens where they'll ask for everything that the inspector came up with to be fixed. Things you pointed out when you were showing them the home, they now want fixed. Those usually end up falling upon deaf ears in terms of the sellers. The environment we're in right now, probably everyone listening has experienced putting an offer in and it being a multiple offer situation, and then not getting their offer accepted. So it's difficult. And then if you do get your offer accepted, a lot of times you've got to assume that seller's got a backup offer right behind you. And if your client is, kind of being very, very nitpicky, and maybe aggressive in terms of the home inspection, it's going to fall upon deaf ears, potentially with the seller. So again, educating the buyer, in terms of the environment we're now in, seller's market, difficult to get things bought. I mean, I put a property under agreement yesterday. I'm the seller's agent. I know, and I've got a backup offer. It's a 2 full price offers, so I've got a backup offer right behind it. And I know the buyer's agent didn't go up. The air conditioners unit on these, it's a condo. The building's 16 years old. The air conditioners are 16 years old. My client's already said if they ask about the air condition, tell them to take a hike. So, they're not going to give them anything off. So, that agent, she works for another firm, she didn't, she never went up there and looked. I know it. So, it may come up, but it's going to fall upon deaf ears. It's going to fall on deaf ears because my client's, here's Elena. Hey, Elena. My client's, kind of a hard nose, and we've got a backup offer for full price, right behind it. So that's the environment we're in, where sellers feel emboldened and buyers, you want to buy a house, sometimes you've got to ask yourself, okay, even though, there's things wrong with it, am I still paying a fair price, or am I willing to, have to start all over again, have another home inspection, maybe apply for the loan again? But really it's up to your client, and then ultimately educating them. It never hurts to ask. I mean, you can always ask in terms of trying to get something off. I mean, I had another one where the buyer's agent, the seller had already moved out. We found some ungrounded ungrounded outlets. We found a place outside that was full of termites, so we asked them to, treat for termites and, give us a $1,200 credit for, for the electrical issue. They did. The buyer probably would have moved forward, regardless. But we asked, we got it. Sometimes you ask and you don't get it. One other thing, this is a little bit of a side, is when you're writing a contract, don't be afraid to put in the contract, in the additional terms, selling agent to mark the listing pending. If you can get it, instead of going from, active to active with contract, if you can go right to pending, you got a better shot that no more offers are going to come in. Because what ends up happening, when you have an offer and then another, and you're under agreement, and then another offer comes in that maybe is equal to, or maybe better, maybe a little bit higher price, maybe better financing terms than your client put forth, the seller's not really going to want to hear you when you get to the home inspection. So you've kind of put yourself, in a negative, kind of position. Now, if they're not willing to do that, I would take that right away. But it's something, again, maybe with the offer you can ask, and then you're better off if it's marked immediately as pending, as opposed to active with contract. So again, so now you're actually into the negotiations. You're helping your client kind of think through it. Hopefully both sides are reasonable. Sometimes reasonableness in this business doesn't always happen, and both parties actually begin to sort of dig in their heels. But you're close. You're close to agreeing. Claren just had one that she put under agreement where where they were close, and so we're going to let Claren tell what she did with that.
Okay, so the home inspection revealed a bunch of things, like there was no grounding wires. She would have to, get the whole house outfitted with that. Insulation in the roof was really bad. Just a whole bunch of other things that she'd have to replace the roof really soon, stuff like that. So she asked for additional credit, and the seller didn't want to do it. They only wanted to give half of it, and the deal was going to fall apart over $1,500. So we had them each come in a little bit, and then me and the agent gave up $500 to make up the extra gap of $1,000, and that was it.
Right. So Claren actually, she kept it together. So that's basically, a key component of our job, is to sort of keep the deal together, keep it going. She was willing to sacrifice a little bit of her commission, as was the other agent, to sort of ultimately kind of make it happen and get it done. The property now is appraised out, and she's heading towards the the finish line. So good job with that. But again, I mean, you can see, so just on $1,000, that deal would have cratered, and then she would have, ultimately she probably would have sold, her name's Lisa, right? Mm-hmm. The client. So she probably would have sold Lisa another home, or, so she would have continued on with Lisa, but that was the home Lisa wanted. She bridged the gap. She made it happen, and that's, so kind of always, I mean, again, if you're $5,000 apart, sacrificing a little bit of your commission probably isn't going to do it, but the whole idea is everybody working together to keep the deal going. But you can see, I mean, it's a great example of how something over $1,000 was going to fall apart because one side thought one thing, the other side thought another, and it would have come undone. So good job there. So again, the more you've educated your client in terms of what the home inspection is before they start the home inspection, the more issues with the house you've been able to point out when you were showing them the property, the more prepared they're going to be. The better educated you have them on what the home inspection involves is awesome. And then again, sometimes even with all that, things do come up that the buyer does think they need to sort of continue on. If you can get that for them, awesome. If you can't, but you're close, maybe, giving a little bit off, ultimately gets it. But we're in a very, very difficult environment for buyers right now. It's hard to get stuff bought. If they don't want to buy the house, usually there's another person, right behind them, that's willing to stick in. So some sellers are just less, they're just less motivated and less willing to deal with, kind of buyer requests. So, and then again, I put in my email out, we were going to talk a little bit about FHA, VA, home inspection. So there you have the home inspection, but then you also have the appraisal. And the appraiser for the FHA and the VA is going to come out, and then they're going to come up with a list of items that need to be fixed for the buyer to be able to get the loan. So if you're working with a VA or FHA buyer, there's a lot of them out there in this market, you really need to understand what those requirements are of the FHA and VA, so that you're not having your client purchase something and then there's a whole bunch of inspection items and the seller has no real intentions of fixing them. I mean, again, hopefully the listing agent is on top of their game. They understand what the requirements are and feel confident that the property is going to be able to go through the inspection, or their client's willing to fix things if in fact they sign you up. So maybe now I'll turn it to questions. Anybody have any questions? Any questions on Periscope? You can type in.
When you're talking about the electric box, what are you looking for when you look at the electric box?
Okay, well, the electric box, what you're looking for is, again, the age of the electric box, how old it looks. If it's 200 amps, that's good. If it's less than that, it's still fine. But if they're going to do some you know, if they're going to do some, you know, upgrades to the home, the box may not be able to, you know, handle it. You're going to look at the wires coming out of the box. If the wires look like, you know, a bad hairdo with stuff all over the place, you know, you know, that's not good, and it may, you know, be indicative that somebody, you know, a non-licensed professional did the work. Just on a side, if you run into, you'd also want to look at the name on the box. There's two types of boxes that are uninsurable. One is called Challenger. So if you see a Challenger box or you see a Federal Pacific box, that's a big problem. And more than likely, unless, you know, the seller is willing to, you know, replace that, that's about a $2,500 fix. You know, you're not going to be able to, your client's not going to be able to get insurance, because when they do the 4-point, that'll get noted, and then those boxes have now been proven to cause fires. So Challenger, Federal Pacific are problematic.
How long will the insurance company give you to change out the box if you do find somebody? 30 days.
Yeah, 30 days after the closing.
Usually you can find an insurance company that will cover you, and they'll give you 30 days, because nobody wants to put money into a house they don't own, and sometimes the seller won't change it out. So I've had instances where the insurance company says, we will give you 30 days to correct this issue.
I mean, if you get to those issues and, you know, I mean, give me a call and we can kind of chat through them and sort of, you know, strategize as to the best way, or, you know, sometimes, you know, there's always a solution. It's just, you know, getting there sometimes is difficult. Any other questions?
No, I just have a comment about, you know, encouraging a seller to put a home warranty on, because, you know, looking at the air conditioning units, I found that the age of the air conditioning unit would help them understand that it's going to, you know, break or something, because I'm dealing with a case where one air conditioning unit is 21 years old, the other one is 26 years old, so that's kind of helping them to understand the need of them kicking in with home warranty.
Yeah, I mean, a home warranty is always good when stuff is old, if you can get it. You know, again, you know, hopefully I mean, if I'm the listing agent and a buyer's agent and is telling me that the air conditioning is old, I really don't have I have no tolerance for it, quite honestly, because you had to see that. I mean, you can tell when something is old, and your client made that offer. That's anything, you know, here's kind of the general rule. When it's visually apparent, you really can't be asking for a credit. You saw that. You know, you're going to have a hard time getting that through. So if your client is thinking, you know, the roof, and again, this is a conventional buyer, you know, FHA and VA is different because it has to be fixed for them to get the loan. But on a conventional buyer, if they come and they say, oh, the roof is old, you know, you could have pulled the permit and saw how old the roof was. You probably could have looked at the seller's disclosure and saw how old the roof is, or you could have looked at the roof and probably figured out that it's an older roof. So, you know, the listing agent and the seller probably is not gonna give you any benefit there. And, you know, you as the buyer's agent have probably not done the best job, because you didn't point that out to your client and you didn't educate them in advance that the things you can see, you're not going to get off. It's the inspection is, you know, it's an as-is contract, so they're buying the house as is. So when you've seen it, you know, it's tough to ask for. You can always ask. I mean, there's no harm in asking, but you know, to be expecting to get it and then have your client be, you know, mad at the seller because they didn't get it, or they're ready to walk away, you know, you've just wasted a bunch of time and effort and probably not done the best job for your client. So, you know, the stuff you can see, I mean, again, the inspection is for safety issues, education issues, and items that really never, you know, what is it, the galvanized plumbing. So nobody's going under the crawl space. You know, we work hard at Dalton Wade, but I don't expect my agents to go under the crawl space and look at the plumbing. You know, I mean, but the inspector's going under there, and if it's galvanized plumbing, you know, it's a potential problem for, you know, corrosion, leaks, and insurance issues. Asking for a credit off for that, that's certainly okay. Again, you know, Lisa's probably the only agent with the little tester out there. Where's the tester? Show that again in case some people just joined on. So, you know, she goes out and she's, you know, because again, she knows what ends up happening. She knows that if she doesn't test it, you know, the home inspector's going to test it, and a lot of houses aren't grounded, and it's $100 an outlet to fix it. So if the house has got 20 outlets, it's a $2,000 bill for the electrician to come out there. The homeowner may not want to hear it. She's already.
The guy's 130, just FYI.
Yeah, you know, so it can be anywhere from $90 to $130 depending on who you use to actually do the, you know, they wire, you know, they change the wiring inside the outlet to fix it. But again, she's already on top of it. She's already told her client. She's taken that issue potentially out because again, you know, the buyer hears, oh, my house isn't grounded, I want $2,500 off. You know, the seller, you know, the seller may have a backup offer and have no tolerance for that. So the more you can see up front, just the better off you are. So any questions from anybody on Periscope?
Can I make a comment on the, so on the home warranty that you mentioned, they don't all include the AC. So if you ask for a home warranty, or if your buyer chooses to get one for themselves after the purchase of the home, you have to specifically get one that covers the AC, because they don't all do it. So write that in the contract.
Okay.
You know, to include AC.
You mean the home warranty contract?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Right.
That was all.
So anybody have any questions on Periscope?
I have a question.
Okay.
I have a client who has who want to buy the house, which is 150 with the FHA. I found the house is moving condition, everything is good. The bad thing is in the flood zone. So how I can calculate with his budget and then flood insurance and so on.
I mean, basically, you would call an insurance agent and kind of get a quote on what the flood insurance might be, and then also talk to their lender and sort of, you know, kind of build that in so that he can actually, you know, still qualify for the loan, given that it has flood insurance.
That's going to be the biggest thing, because that's going to change.
His debt to income
His debt to
ratio, all his ratios will change because of that. So
You can often ask the agent, the seller knows what they pay, so you can ask what they pay. I have one right now that the seller doesn't pay flood insurance because he owns the home outright, and it's in a flood zone, but many of the houses around him are not. So we're going to get an elevation certificate and try and get that home either out of the flood zone, or, you know, that will give us the ammunition to reduce the price
of the flood
coverage.
insurance,
Now,
right?
it depends. If you're looking in a place that's obviously right by the water, you're in shore acres, you're probably deep in a flood zone, then you're just going to pay the flood
Yeah,
insurance.
actually-
but there's many different elevation levels that
Yeah,
are
the
going to affect.
location is not really close to the water. The only thing, if I see the map, it's a little more south.
Mhm.
So it's the more south you go, even you're in the middle from the west east, it tends to be a flood zone.
Yep. You can check the map
Oh.
and see what.
Yeah, it was.
Oh,
It
okay.
has a flood zone. Yeah, it was an AE zone.
Yeah, right.
An
Okay.
elevation
Yeah.
certificate will help.
Yep, exactly. So, anybody out there with any questions on Periscope? All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. As always, if anyone has any follow-up questions, we certainly I'd be happy to answer them. And have an awesome weekend. Thank you.
Nick actually just got me a little like multi-tool thing to keep in my purse.